So is Mikel Merino, yes, Mikel Merino, I'm laughing as I say it, the answer to Arsenal's striking problems? We didn't bring in a number 9 because we had Mikel Merino all along. Why are we complaining? Why do we complain as Arsenal fans? And look, I resist it slightly because I still think Martinelli's not far from being back. I still hope and really believe a little bit that Saka will have a part to play this season. And when you do that, you really then start to question, well, is Merino really the way we're going to go? But the thing is, with the options we've got now, which are very limited, Arteta's going to want to recreate as much as possible what he had before, try not change it, in terms of at least personnel, then at least profiles. And weirdly, Mikel Merino does suit this role quite well, and it's not that surprising that he came on and scored the goals he did, which we're going to analyse along with his performance in a bit more detail. But let's explain why it's not that surprising that Mikel Merino was one who's turned to try and replicate some of what Kai Havertz has been doing up front. When you look at the key similarities between the two on this graphic here, starting with the simple stuff, right, that he's left-footed, as is Kai Havertz, that they were both signed to be number 8s in this midfield. We forget that before we signed Merino, it was Kai Havertz who was meant to be the Granit Xhaka replacement, and the fact that they're 6'2" or more, profile-wise, both very similar in that sense. They both rank actually quite highly and have always performed well when it comes to a high dual win percentage rate, high aerial dual win rate. In terms of tactics, they're both expected to enter the box, whether it be, of course, from the striking position, but mainly in that left 8. We've always expected movement from that left 8. We've always expected that player to go and crash the box like Granit Xhaka, who ended his final season at Arsenal with 7 goals and actually ended a goal threat. I mean, this is something that we've seen from that position, even when it was Smith Rowe, who now is scoring loads of goals at Fulham. Why? Because we always knew he had that goal threat in him, and the left 8 has always had to have that when playing for Arsenal. Maybe why Martin Odegaard hasn't always had the opportunity under Mikel Arteta. There's got to be something about their ability to attack the box in there. And of course, he is strong on set pieces, Mikel Merino, which again has always been something that the left 8's had to contribute to defensively and going forward. So there's lots of similarities there. Even though Kai Havertz was seen as a young, up-and-coming second striker, attacking midfielder who had he grew and he became more of a sort of striker number 9 profile. Mikel Merino developed really as a central midfielder, played his football there, the whole time for whether it be Spain, whether it be Real Sociedad, but is someone who does have a goal threat. We've seen that in the few goals he scored at Arsenal and some of the data too. To play this role, like I mentioned, you've got to be good on duels, and when he arrived, we saw that in last season's campaign. Amongst Europe's top 7 leagues, according to Opta data, he was at the absolute top when it comes to winning duels. Mohamed Kudus up there too, no surprise that Mikel Arteta wanted him at some point. But you've got to be good at duels because the striker for Arsenal, the number 9, is always going to be in the walls, whether it be on and off the ball. They're going to have to do their fair share of duelling with centre-backs, trying to bring players into play. I thought Merino did that very, very well. But when you look at some of his other FBref data from this season alone, playing in the Premier League as a midfielder, you can see that some of the stuff he really stands out for actually kind of can be translated to that striking position. So again, when I laughed at Merino coming on up front, because I was watching it at home with my family, I was thinking, okay, wow, this really is what we're resorting to. And shout out to Sam Dean, who wrote an article and actually called that this could be the way Arsenal go with it. I just thought it was fascinating looking at some of the data and seeing that actually, like I said, some of the profiles and sort of raw things we've seen do marry up with Kai Havertz's strength. Some of the numbers here, let me show you on FBref. When you go to the shooting data, he ranks really highly amongst Premier League midfielders. In the 97th percentile for goals with 0.46 per 90 amongst Premier League midfielders, showing that he is somewhat of a goal threat. But look at this, his percentage of shots on target up at 44%. And you can hit the pause button if you want to look at some of this data in more detail, but ranking really highly when it comes to shooting, being a goal threat from the midfield position amongst Premier League midfielders. When you go to things like the defence as well, then you look at some of his defensive stats under the FBref data, you can see that very high for tackles in the attacking third, someone who knows how to press in that attacking third, and so off the ball isn't going to cost their Arsenal anything. If anything, he might actually help adopt the press really, really well from that position. Let's go to the possession stats on FBref data. Again, in terms of touches in the attacking third, really high for Premier League midfielders, as much as touches, shall I say, in the attacking penalty area at 4.79 per 90, putting him in the 93rd percentile. It's up there for things like successful take-on percentage as well, and times tackled during take on and all that. But as you can also see, carries into the penalty area is high, and progressive passes received at 5.82 per 90, really high, putting him in the 88th percentile amongst Premier League midfielders. It's just really funny. This guy who's barely played for Arsenal. Like, he's not I thought he was going to wrestle himself into that left 8 position, but he hasn't. It's been Declan Rice's with Partey's form and Ødegaard in there too. So he's been more of a squad player. But he was a real goal threat against Liverpool from set pieces. He scored against Brentford, and I thought his movement, the way he used his positioning against Leicester was top too. Let's go through one more FB Ref piece of data. High for interceptions, ball recoveries too. We know he can do some of the defensive work brilliantly, but aerials won 3.65 per 90, putting him in the 99th percentile, one of the best in the air in the Premier League from midfield. We're not surprised about that, but also the percentage of aerials won at 61.5%. So he really does have, in terms of the raw attributes we've talked about and the underlying data from midfield already this season, a lot of stuff that feels very translatable to the striking position in the way Mikel Arteta wants to use his striker. So you look at all that, and actually the coaching staff and Sam Dean, who wrote the article, and others will be going, yeah, there was evidence there that he could come on and do really well against Leicester, but can he do well against other opposition? West Ham will be another level, and then after that it's Forest away, Man United away. So big test for Merino to come. Will he keep their number 9 shirt? I think he probably will. Still flirting with the idea of it being Trossard, but we'll talk about that at the end of the video. I want to show you here via Stat Zone Merino's influence map, because when you look at this first influence map I'm showing you here, Mikel Merino isn't on the screen. Reason is because he came on in the 68th minute. Leandro Trossard, you can see his name. It's very small, very central, quite high up the pitch. He was the false 9, but really struggling to get into the game for 68 minutes, not having the impact you'd want. The higher touches for the likes of Partey, Ødegaard, Saliba, Jurriën Timber. But the front three, yes, Nwaneri clearly very involved, but Sterling struggling to get involved. Trossard not having the impact you'd hope. Rice not as involved in the game as much, although I thought he grew into it and was ultimately superb throughout the rest of the game, Declan Rice. But the minute Mikel Merino came on, we'll show you this, because this is the player influence map from the 68th minute on to full time. Look how involved Mikel Merino is. I mean, apart from the goals, which obviously is going to have a big influence on the game, I thought his hold-up play and the way he was combining with the likes of Declan Rice, touching the ball down into Declan, touching the ball down into Martin Ødegaard, and actually just keep everything moving. He understood the position really well, and it meant that Trossard got that little bit more involved. Ødegaard, started to pull the strings a little bit more once he had a bit more of a focal point as well in Mikel Merino, and it just felt like everything had a balance to it. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe putting our 6/8 up front was going to give Arsenal a balance with 25 minutes of the game to go, but it absolutely did. And Arsenal went up a level once Mikel Merino came on and went up front. So let's talk about how he did it, what was so impressive about his cameo. Because we've got here the tactical pad, and we've got the Leicester sort of in a back four. And what Leicester didn't do throughout the rest of this game was, as we approached the final 20 minutes, they didn't try and really protect what they had. If anything, it was the Miles Lewis-Skelly kind of touch away from, I can't remember who it was at the back post, that basically kind of kept the game alive for Arsenal, because we could easily have been 1-0 down. So they didn't go into like a back 5 or a back 6 shape and protect what they got. And you got the back 4 here. Now, what Merino I felt did really well a few times, he just positioned himself in between the two centre-backs. In between centre-back and full-back. He was always peeling off away from the walls with both centre-backs and ensuring that he was targeting one of the full-backs too, which I thought was quite clever, and it's the kind of thing you see from strikers in general. And Jurriën Timber here, this doesn't end up in a goal, but I thought it was a first warning sign to Leicester that actually Arsenal can, if they deliver a good ball into the box, they can find Mikel Merino, because he's understanding the runs quite well. Timber whips a lovely ball into the box towards that back post. He's in between centre-back and full-back, and it just gets away from both. The centre-back, I don't think wants to get a touch on it, to be honest, because you're likely sending it towards goal. You're hoping that you're doing enough to put off Mikel Merino. That is what happened. Mikel Merino couldn't quite get there. It was just a bit in front of him. It was a great ball for Jurriën Timber from quite a deep area, quite a central kind of cross. It's the kind of area that Trent Alexander-Arnold attacks those crosses really well. And Mikel Merino's read it and made a run to the back post. Doesn't result in a goal, but it's kind of an early idea. Already it's like, okay, that's some good movement from a good cross. Maybe we've got more of a focal point to aim for here. Then Ethan Nwaneri, a different type of cross. He's in the penalty area. It's much more central. It's much more about the guile and lift on the cross and picking out the spot, because you can't pick a wide area with this cross and just hope that the attacker, gets the right sprint on it and is able to just guide the ball into the back of the net. He has to pick out a spot, and then Mikel Merino has to do a lot of work with that cross and just sort of really use his neck muscles and just bury it into the back of the net. And that's what Nwaneri does. He picks out Merino, and again, in between centre-back and full-back. Let's show it one more time. Here we go. In between centre-back and full-back, attacking this area here. And he does it really well. And again, he doesn't really have to bully the centre-backs out the way. The cross, or the defender should I say, out the way. The cross takes him out of the game. Merino's movement's just got to be really, really good, and he just needs to bear it into the back of the net, which he does. But then I love this second goal. And I want to talk about this player for a second. Hold on. I want to talk about Leandro Trossard for a second, because Leandro Trossard has made this his signature recently. I've always felt that as a fullback coming up against Trossard, you're probably fancying yourself, because these days fullbacks are so athletic. Trossard is quick, but he's not lightning quick. And, you know, he's got that trickery, but again, does he sort of bamboozle fullbacks all the time? And actually in the last couple months, and I remember going all the way back to December against Ipswich, where he had the beating with his fullback, whipped into the box, Kai Havertz scored. Against Tottenham, I felt he had the beating of Porro relentlessly. Against Villa, 2 crosses on, you know, from his left foot, whips it into the box. I think, was it his cross? No, it was Martinelli again in the Champions League, my bad. But, you know, the 2 goals against Villa, for example, Havertz and Martinelli, it comes from Trossard and what he does, you know, with his left foot, whipping the ball into the box. He's been doing this a lot recently. He's been beating his fullback and digging out a really wonderful cross with his left foot. And against Wolves, he did a similar thing, only Kai Havertz's header was straight at the keeper, and really that probably should have been a goal. But Trossard's been doing great from the left in terms of beating his fullback and whipping this kind of ball into the box. And Mikel Merino reads it. This time though, he actually decides to pull away from, he decides to go into this area and actually pull away from the defenders. He kind of backs Trossard to get the ball into the box. He doesn't sort of run with the fullbacks a bit more centrally. And I think that was kind of really clever from Merino, because he's basically saying, this is where the space is. I'm going to trust Trossard to get the ball into the box. Trossard running at his fullback, digs out with his left foot. And if I just pause it here before he puts it into the back of the net, Merino, and I've really tried to recreate this as accurate as possible to show you that Mikel Merino is wide of the goal. I mean, a lot of people will go, look, it's a tap-in, basically open your foot, let it bounce off, and in it goes. But 2 things make this a little bit more difficult in terms of the finish. Firstly, that, like I just mentioned, he is wider of the goal. So as that ball's coming into the box, he does somewhat still need to redirect that towards goal. He can't just let it bounce off him and it will go into the back of the net. He does need to guide that towards goal. Merino's foot is here, the ball bounces just before, and as it's on the up again, he's then got to guide it back into the back. And I don't really know how to kind of show you it, but the reason it makes it so much more difficult is you can easily shank that or mistime it, or, you know, take a little bit off the ball or something like that. You can easily make a mess of a ball on that kind of, okay, I don't want to call it a half volley, but, you know, Trossard, it's not rolled across goal for him to just stroke it into the back of the net. He's got to literally just re-guide that bouncing ball right in front of him towards goal. And I think he does brilliantly. And again, we'll show you the goal one more time. Trossard beats his fullback, whips it in, and he just guides it really well into the back of the net. It's 2 really good finishes. It's 3 really good examples of movement I've showed you there. And then what, again, I haven't really recreated is all the hold-up play when the ball is kind of lumped long in the air and he takes a really good touch into Declan Rice, really good touch into Martin Ødegaard. It's good hold-up play. Like, I think he looked so accomplished. And, you know, full credit to Mikel Merino. And, you know, it's calling for everyone to just say, yeah, you play him up top now, because we need goals, and he's actually a goal threat. The numbers show it, but that cameo against Leicester certainly showed it when it comes to the eye test too. Will he be the long-term 9? And when I say long-term, I mean for the rest of this season. We know Havertz and Jesus are both out for the rest of the campaign, so there is a gap to be filled in that 9 spot. The issue I've got with this is, like I said, I think Saka returns, and we're very confident Martinelli does. Knowing that, you know, Trossard and Arsenal have had really good runs with Trossard as the false 9. Saka and Martinelli, and now you've got Ethan Nwaneri too. You know, they can come alive with a false 9 like Trossard, who brings everyone into play. I just wonder whether, you know, when Martinelli returns, do we just have to be sensible about it and just get your forwards on the pitch and keep Trossard as the false 9? But if Merino keeps starting games and scoring goals, he'll just become undroppable, because ultimately you'll keep the guy who's scoring goals up front. And then the rest can fight out on the wing, I suppose. But I mean, what kind of crazy season is this, people? That we know, from some of the ridiculous red cards to the injuries, to the up and down results, to the leads we've thrown away, to the leads we've clawed back and won, to the everything. It's just been such a strange season. you know, the lack of transfer activity, and now here we are talking about Mikel Merino up front. Not that, I mean, I always knew he was a better player than people gave him credit for, and I've made videos about that, and I've tried to defend Mikel Merino and say, look guys, you're all being too harsh. There's a good player in Mikel, but I just didn't think we'd be here talking about him as the potential striker. But football's a funny old game, isn't it? Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Should he start against West Ham up front? Can he score goals between now and the end of the season? This was against, with all due respect, Leicester, who have been in a relegation battle. Can he do this in the Champions League? Can he do this away at Forest? That's the level we need him to get him to. We need to get him to, because we want to win trophies. What is this season? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this breakdown. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and I'll catch you very soon.